Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm Russ Clark. I'm the Business Development Manager at BTRG. We're going to give everybody about another minute or two to get logged in before we get started, so just sit tight and we'll get started here in the next minute. Thanks. Okay, thanks again for joining, everybody. Again, my name is Russ Clark. I'm the Business Development Manager at BTRG. Before we proceed with the presentation, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question box located near the bottom of the control panel. We're going to try and get to as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar, but if we're not able to get to your question, we'll reach out directly and send out a list or a document with all the answers to all the questions to everyone who joined today. Today's session is being recorded. By early next week, you should receive a follow-up email with a link to the webinar replay. It will also be posted on our website, so feel free to find that link and pass along to your colleagues. To get things started, I'd like to introduce our host for today's presentation, President and Founder of BTRG, Jeff Goddard. He has a lot of great information for you today, so without any further delay, I'll turn things over to Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
Thanks, Russ. So thank you all this afternoon for joining this webinar. Our topic is still not on PeopleSoft 9.2, what you need to know. And I think we want those who are attending today to realize that there's lots of webinars we give on Oracle Cloud and modern topics, but if you're not on PeopleSoft 9.2, we haven't forgotten about you. So the agenda is divided into two parts. I'm going to talk a lot about what your strategy might be if you haven't upgraded to 9.2. And then in part two, I'm going to talk about building the business case, and with a quick review of some of the latest HCM features and financials features. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. Here's a picture of me. So part one, what you need to know. And I think the first slide here, I highlight something that's very important, and that is you hear about webinars on PeopleSoft where they don't mention much about the Oracle Cloud applications. And I'm talking about the applications that used to be Fusion and now are branded as Oracle HCM Cloud and Oracle ERP Cloud. And then you hear webinars about cloud and they really don't make a lot of mention about PeopleSoft. But for those of you in this call, I'm sure you're all wrestling with this question mark around how do we move forward? Do we move forward with our PeopleSoft investment or do we shift gears to the cloud? And 2 years ago or 3 years ago when version 9.2 was first out, this wasn't even much of a question mark for PeopleSoft clients because the cloud applications were new and in many cases all the functionality you needed to move off of PeopleSoft wasn't there. But it is today, and a lot of customers are making the switch from PeopleSoft or from other apps like JD Edwards and others to the Oracle Cloud. So this is kind of the elephant in the room. And I'll try to address it with the options we discuss. So one of the factors for a lot of you who have not upgraded to 9.2 is getting into the minds of your executive decision makers. And these are kind of the common threads that we hear when we get into that discussion. Everybody's saying move to the cloud and it will save money. And there's a bit of a jury out on whether it's less expensive. And I've had PeopleSoft for more than 15 years. Maybe it's time to look at something else. Typically, we hear stuff like on-premise is expensive to upgrade, and our business doesn't really change. And then there's this looming question of, are the customizations that we have in PeopleSoft really necessary? So some of these things are true for many customers, and some of them are not. So some of you have applied new changes over time, reduced customizations, implemented new features that really have changed your business, but often that message hasn't funneled its way up to your most senior executives. So they look at your application for funding an upgrade to 9.2 with some doubt, especially when the rest of the marketplace is talking about cloud. So let's just level set where we are with PeopleSoft officially today. 9.2 came out in 2013. This is right off the Oracle website around the continuous support for PeopleSoft, which now extends out to December of 2027 and potentially beyond that, although there's no official view around what that looks like beyond 2027. And if we just focus on HCM and financials, the two lines on there, you can see Premier support ends in 2024, extended support ends in 2027, and sustainment support continues on afterwards. So I think what Oracle's saying here is that if you stay on PeopleSoft beyond 2027, you'll still be supported. You won't be running unsupported software. I think indirectly what they're saying is that the development of new features and capabilities is going to dwindle over time. Now, at first blush, 2027 sounds like a long way away, but it's only 10 years away. And for some customers, they're going to have to evaluate how quickly could we move from PeopleSoft to another product if we do intend to make a move. So the big change has been, since 9.2 came out, this continuous delivery model, which is supported with PUM, PeopleSoft Update Manager, and Selective Adoption. And that means continuous value. So more than 750 new application features have been delivered over that period of time. And if you look at this chart, you can see that in Q4 each year, there's often a lot of new features that are deployed for both ERP and HCM. So it's been a model of not one of stagnation, but one of continuous improvement, new features, and new capabilities. So the official position from Oracle is this. With the January 2016 update to Oracle's lifetime support document, Oracle clearly illustrates its commitment to support PeopleSoft, HCM and financials, 9.2 through at least December 2027. The install base of PeopleSoft is roughly 5,000, a little less than 5,000 customers globally. And at Quest, which is the international user group, they run conferences like Collaborate and Reconnect. They do an annual survey based on the attendees. And this year there were 956 respondents to the survey. This is a PeopleSoft survey, and they represented 468 organizations. And of that group, they indicated 70% of them have made the move to PeopleSoft 9.2. So there's still 30% of you out there that have not upgraded to 9.2. And if you're in this webinar, you might be part of that audience. You can see in 2016, only half of the install base, or the respondents actually in North America, had indicated that they were on 9.2. There are clearly, by this breakdown, there must be some percentage, 5% that are still on some pre-9.0 version of PeopleSoft, and occasionally we run into those. On People Tools, it's an interesting story too, is that PeopleSoft customers are pretty good at staying current with the latest People Tools release. So you've got 60% of the install base is on 8.5.5 or 8.5.4 People Tools, and at the time this survey had been done, 8.5.6 had just come out, so there's only a few. There was only 2%, kind of the early adopters, that were moving to 8.5.6. The other interesting statistic, I'll just tell you, is that of the 30% PeopleSoft customers that have not moved to 9.2, 82% of them indicated that they were planning to upgrade to 9.2 in the next 12 to 24 months. So what's changed? This is the kind of stuff you need to know. What's really changed is the investment model. And if you're old school like me, you might recall this traditional support strategy, which was you did the implementation and you had brought all your business users into fit gap sessions and design sessions in order to configure and make choices around how the software would work. And then for the following years, IT really did most of the maintenance and updates. You downloaded bundles and fixes as time went by. Maybe you added some reporting capabilities and things like that. But there wasn't a lot of user engagement until you got to a major upgrade, which typically was done every 3 to 4 years. And in the interim, you might have developed a list of enhancements that the users wanted, but they weren't actually implemented until you got to that upgrade stage every 3 to 4 years. And at the same time, usually IT was challenged to figure out, well, do we need a hardware refresh? Do we need new servers, more RAM? How do we address performance and security at the same time that we're doing an upgrade? So that model changed with the release of 9.2 back in 2013. And it shifted to this continuous business improvement model. And sometimes Oracle refers to this as selective adoption strategy. You've got now multiple images being released every year with new features. It includes fixes and updates, as well as new technology for things like Fluid and workflow. And it comes delivered on the latest People Tools image. Every time you download a PUM image, you're also getting that delivered on the People Tools image. So in some cases, you need a newer version of People Tools to deploy those capabilities. And that's just each year. So that's a real shift. Customers have been struggling a little bit to go from the old model to the new model. And this new model requires a rapid deployment methodology where you can take new features out of the box with minimal configuration and put them in front of your users in a broad way. Another element that customers need in order to adopt this model is some condensed testing method. And to support that, PeopleSoft delivers PeopleSoft Test Framework, which can automate regression testing and take the people-intensive part of testing away and automate it so that you can rapidly deploy these images. So in reality, what we've seen since 2013 is that there are lots of customers that went live with 9.2. They're still on image 8 or image 12, and they've had challenges getting funding to even keep current with the latest PUM images. Yesterday's model was IT-driven. It was maintenance-centric. Upgrades were basically an IT responsibility. Sometimes an upgrade was necessary just to stay compliant with your PeopleSoft support. Features were released every 3 to 4 years, and I think executives viewed those upgrades as being expensive. Today's model is very different. It's one where there's a partnership between the line of business and IT. The business users are engaged. It's driven by the new features and improving your business. And the cost is viewed as being small and incremental rather than the big upgrade that you used to have to do. That's a big shift. So back to that Quest survey, one of the questions they asked in the survey was, has your organization developed a selective adoption strategy? And I think what they're implying there is, are you into this mode of continuous improvement? Well, 45% answered yes. 28% said no, and 26% said they were unsure. So you have a bigger percentage that are no or unsure, which is, I think, quite accurate. So some of the challenges in getting funding for your PeopleSoft upgrade or continuing that PeopleSoft investment have to do with that shift in model. Instead of, IT kind of expects you to come every 3 or 4 years with a request for an upgrade. And now you're basically asking for money to get to 9.2, but then fund some kind of continuous release strategy over the next few years. And there's much debate around, is that capital? Is that operating? How does that jive with our IT DevOps environment, which might be an evolving thing in your organization? Another challenge is that the people who have typically been responsible for PeopleSoft internally might find it difficult to build the business case for new functionality. Remember, if IT has been supporting PeopleSoft and sustaining PeopleSoft, they're not necessarily the best people to go to the executives and say, here's all the new functionality we get and need. The other, a couple other factors are that there's conflicting messages from multiple vendors. Remember, you've got all these other vendors out there vying for your business, trying to convince you to move off PeopleSoft to something else, and they'll use just about any means or any rumors to get your attention. And then the last thing that we see more often than not is that some organizations are slow to change. And of course, routine is easy. So when you talk about upgrading PeopleSoft 9.2 and show people all these new functionalities and the fluid UI and mobile, some people are nervous about that. And they're saying, just keep my payroll system the same. Just give me what I had before. Don't change it. So these are some of the barriers to getting funding for a PeopleSoft upgrade. The other factor is the road ahead has many options. Perhaps as an organization, you expect a journey to the cloud, and it's a long-term goal. It could be a 5-year goal, a 7-year goal. In this diagram, I'm just saying a 3 to 5-year goal. And if you just look at PeopleSoft on its own, and you had a very clean setup for your PeopleSoft software, that move could be done in a shorter period of time. But the realities are, lots of our customers have multiple ledgers or multiple charts of account, and they have best-of-breed software that integrates with PeopleSoft from different vendors. So it's not just taking PeopleSoft and moving to the cloud. It's all about how do we clean up that model of best-of-breed before we make the move. So what can you do in the interim? Well, here's 5 options that we often discuss with our customers. These are the things you need to know. Option 1, probably the most straightforward. Upgrade PeopleSoft to 9.2. Basically deploy the new features and capabilities that are being delivered. You've paid for it in your maintenance fees over the last 4 years. And if your maintenance is 25%, it's like you've bought the software all over again. Basically continue that investment of improving your business with PeopleSoft 9.2 by deploying new features. That has a medium level of cost, and it has a fairly low level of disruption to your business users. So they're going to be using the same software they used before. Core processes for payroll and financials still look the same. Option 2 is a slightly different tact on upgrading PeopleSoft, which is only maintain the status quo. Don't deploy any new features. Get me to 9.2 in the lowest cost way, and then we'll re-examine where we are in 3 to 5 years. And we hear this occasionally from customers. This is typically a low cost, no frills upgrade is how we brand it, and it has no disruption to your business users whatsoever, because they're basically going to get what they do today, but on a 9.2 platform. Option 3 is to switch to the cloud or SaaS applications. And this is gaining some traction, without a doubt. It's evident in Oracle's Q4 financial report. The cost of moving to this, I say, is low, because you're offsetting the cost of new software by eliminating your PeopleSoft maintenance and potentially eliminating your infrastructure and all that goes with it, your servers, your DBAs, your system admins. All the costs that were associated with your on-prem are going away. So that's going to lower the cost of making the move. But it does have a medium or high level of disruption to your business. You have to convert your software. There's new navigation. Your users are going to have to learn how to use new software. Option 4, you've probably heard this from Oracle. They call it the hybrid cloud approach. This is a combination of keeping some of your software on-premise and using some new capabilities in the cloud. Classic examples we hear about are customers want budgeting and strategic planning. They implement Hyperion in the cloud, but it's integrated with their on-premise ERP. So this is a model of gradual adoption of the cloud. Unfortunately, it's high cost because you're really not eliminating any of your on-premise costs. You still have your maintenance, you still have your DBAs and servers and all the infrastructure. But it does have a fairly low level of disruption because you're keeping your core. The 5th option is a new one. It's gaining quite a bit of traction, quite a bit of interest, and that's to take your existing PeopleSoft system or an upgraded version of PeopleSoft 9.2 and run it on the Oracle Cloud. What's associated with this is really just infrastructure savings. You keep your customizations, you keep your license agreement, but you don't run PeopleSoft anymore. And so the cost of running PeopleSoft in-house should drop. It's a low-cost option, and it has, of course, no disruption because your user community were using PeopleSoft before, they continue to use it on the cloud. So Quest added this question to the survey: how many of you are considering running PeopleSoft on the cloud? 21% responded yes, it's under consideration. 39% gave a firm no, which is no surprise, and 40% were unsure, which is an indication of how new this concept is, I would say. It is new, but Oracle does deliver a process for letting you move your PeopleSoft applications to the cloud. And you might ease your way into this by just moving your test, dev, and QA environments to the cloud, keeping production on-prem, or you might want to move the whole thing. The process is called lift and shift. It uses Oracle's Cloud Manager, which is one of their newest tools available to you. You basically reverse engineer a DPK. I don't want to get into technical details because that's not my strong suit. And then you move that DPK into the Oracle Cloud, which you procure as new services using the Oracle Compute Cloud. You buy sufficient storage and CPU, and then you use Cloud Manager to deploy and set up new environments as you need them. So move from on-premise to the Oracle Cloud. Why would a PeopleSoft customer do this? Well, one reason is you can take advantage of lower cost infrastructure, not having to maintain that internally, and you benefit from the elasticity of being able to ramp up and ramp down environments as necessary. So let's say you download a PUM image and you only need a test environment for 2 months. You've got the capability with Cloud Manager to just deploy that environment quickly, use it for 2 months, and then shut it down and not have to pay for that storage and that CPU. So the flexibility of the cloud is really what's being sold here. Also, in the long run, if your organization wants to offset your internal data center costs, this is a good way to do it. Some of our customers have leased hardware that comes up for renewal. If they can downsize their internal data center, they can save money. Okay, so on to part 2 of the webinar, and this is good because I'm right on schedule. If you're building the business case, one of the things you have to consider is the new features, and these are the selling points, some of the reasons for going to 9.2. So I'm just going to give you some of the latest kind of quickly. I group the enhancements that have come out in each PUM release into these 3 categories. One, there are things that improve the end user experience, and they make the power users of your software more efficient. These are things like analytics, pivot grids, dashboards, work centers, and there's many of these things that come delivered. But the goal of this group of enhancements is to reduce the time it takes to process transactions and use the system. What you're aiming for are reductions, like 20% less time to handle a match exception, or 30% higher volume of journals being entered per month. In the HR payroll world, maybe reducing the time it takes for benefits enrollment from, on average, half an hour down to 10 minutes. And that makes your employees spend less time going through the enrollment process. So that's one group of features. The next group, group 2, are related to mobile, self-serve, and fluid, and workflow for that matter. But essentially these tools are being used to expand the audience of people that use PeopleSoft. You know, how to get it into the hands of managers and employees in a broad way. The goal here is to automate tasks that were previously performed by people. So let's say you had HR help desk resources that answered the phone every time an employee wanted to look up what their vacation balance was. Well, now they can look that up on their phone. You can reduce the FTEs that are associated with help desk. And the technologies that are delivered there, particularly mobile and fluid, are easy to use. So there's really no training necessary, and employees and managers have access to them anytime, not just during work hours or when they're on site behind the company firewall. The last category is new functionality. And as I said, core functionality around HR, payroll, benefits, financials, accounts payable, accounts receivable, GL, asset management, the core processes haven't really changed much. It's all kinds of features have been added on to that core functionality. And many of these features eliminate previous customizations. So we talk to a customer, they've got a customization they've added because they want to be able to add new chart fields. Now that comes delivered. If you can move from your customized processes to vendor-supported processes, it's much lower cost to support PeopleSoft over time, and you can get back to vanilla. So with Fluid, as an example, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about the Fluid interface, Quest asked customers, where are you in your Fluid user interface strategy? You can see 20%, a little less than 20%, said they've completed a rollout of Fluid, 18%. 32% said they're currently deploying Fluid, and 33% said they're evaluating it. So it gives you a rough idea. You haven't seen this huge shift to Fluid just yet, but it's, you know, based on how many are evaluating and in deployment, that's like 60% of the install base, at least from the survey. Gives you a good indication that people are making the move to Fluid. And they're making the move to Fluid not just as a mobile strategy, but to make the user experience easier. I'll give you some examples. I'll start off with HCM. So if you're evaluating the functionality and building your business case for an upgrade, you should start with the PeopleSoft information website. There is a section there on new features, and there are two tools that you absolutely need to look at. One is the community ideas space on Oracle support, and the other one is the cumulative features overview. If you haven't seen the CFO tool, cumulative features overview, not a chief financial officer tool, it's pretty simple to use. Step one, you identify the products that you have. Step two, you put in your current release. You put in your target release as step three and generate a report which you can download to Excel. And that gives you a list of all the features that have been added, even if this is between PUM images on 9.2 or if you're back on version 9.0 and you want to find out what's changed, this is your starting point. So we use it at BTRG, and we encourage our customers to use it. In the HCM space, Image 22, this is PUM Image 22, was released in April, and Image 23 came out in July. There's another image planned for this year, Image 24, which will be released in October. I'm going to talk about some of these features that are specific to the latest image release, just to give you a sense of how to justify an upgrade. So I'll start with ePay, just as a simple example of employees using self-serve page to withdraw consent or receive electronic year-end forms. It's a tile on a Fluid interface. It looks like this. It looks like this when it's on your phone. And you can see you can check your paycheck on your phone, tax withholding, or this W2, W2C consent functionality. And similarly, if you want to withdraw consent, you can do that through the same process, entering a verifying ID to make sure you are who you say you are. You receive notice, and there you know, very simple transaction to add or withdraw consent for W2 forms. ePay is the main Fluid interface for access to pay information. This is just an example where you can update updatable PDFs and how you receive them and how you fill them out, and whether that is the process that your organization should use. So now administrators can configure forms so that the confirmation does not include the updated withholding form. There are some security concerns about withholding information. You can see here, you can display the confirmation, you get acknowledgement, and there you go. You get for example, there a W4. Okay, e-performance for those customers that have performance management in PeopleSoft. There are new setup options that include document sections for defining criteria, steps, and tracking the progress of somebody filling out their self-evaluation or their manager's evaluation. This enhancement splits the option into two separate ones. Now administrators have the choice to include sections in either step, both steps, or none. So I guess before you didn't have the ability to choose all three options for tracking the steps in your performance evaluation. Another new feature, simple thing, but makes a big difference, is in the employee's self-evaluation, they can attach a document. Let's say you work for Google and you've drafted a manifesto and you want to add it to your performance management evaluation. Now you have the ability to upload that manifesto and be relieved of your job. Another very useful part in the HCM world here is guided self-serve, which is embedded throughout much of the Fluid interface. And you can see here an example of some of the transactions that a manager can use: transfer an employee, promote an employee. And one of the new features in the latest image release is to be able to request a new position. And it can be based on an existing position, and there's a guided self-serve set of steps you go through. Something like this. You can see you can also clone a position where you would identify the hours for that new position based on an existing position. You can add attachments, submit. So, cloning positions, much more enabled in that Fluid environment for managers to do it themselves rather than calling HR. Okay, another simple enhancement to the manager desktop is the ability for a manager to change a position, or is it a position, or an employee from full-time to part-time hours or different hours than they currently have. You can see these screens are all pretty simple, easy to use. Change the standard hours. Employer receives notification. Also on the manager desktop, for self-serve purposes, some of the new features include personal competencies, honors and awards, responsibilities, licenses, and certifications. So those tiles that are circled in red are new, and they're all designed to make the view of an employee snapshot more comprehensive for the manager who's managing their staff. Here's what it looks like on a phone. See job details, compensation, performance, promotion readiness. These are very, very useful functions that can help justify your upgrade. In the recruiting sphere, the Fluid Candidate Gateway has also moved its functionality into this easy-to-use Fluid environment, so you can deploy that on a mobile platform and on a browser. It's going to look the same regardless. This particular search option lets you choose the number of days outstanding for a job if you're searching for jobs that have been posted within, for example, the last 7 days. You can view all jobs, view jobs posted in the last 7 days, and you can change that number to whatever you want. Recruiting also, Fluid Candidate Gateway now includes options for disallowing the referral of a friend or email of a friend. I guess before those capabilities, as useful as they are, you couldn't turn them off. They showed up on the page, and now as administrators you can hide those buttons if you don't want to use the refer a friend or email a friend option. Just give you a sense of what these screens look like. Okay, I'm just going to quickly move ahead. You can see there are a lot more enhancements to recruiting if you're using the Candidate Gateway. We have, I think our customers have a split. We have lots of customers using Candidate Gateway, and we have lots of customers that are using Taleo. So it's a mixed bag, or even a third-party recruiting solution. This is just examples of how you can restrict employees from seeing jobs they are not eligible for because they failed some pre-screening process. In time and labor, again, time and labor uses the fluid interface, and there are new capabilities that allow a manager to enter time, review weekly time and payable time. Sometimes this is done by an administrator for a group or department. Now it can be done pretty easily themselves. All right, on to financials. Try to stay on time here. The current PUM image for financials is image number 24. Image 25 is due out in September, and the last image for this calendar year will be image 26, which is due out in December. And as you saw with that earlier chart, usually Q4 has a lot of features, a lot of new capabilities. Here's just a snapshot of some of the highest value ones based on the upgrades that we've done for a lot of customers. First of all, work centers. There are many of them, but it brings together everything that your power users need in one place, and they're designed to make transaction processing more efficient. So there's the general ledger work center, and there's an accounts payable, just two examples of work centers that come pre-delivered. And these work centers combine links on the left side to reports, queries, and analytics that you used to have to navigate through to the query tool, run a query, perhaps export that query to Excel, and then go back into voucher entry or journal entry in order to finish a transaction. Now you can do that all from one place. And the goal here is to make the job of transaction workers more efficient. Lots of our customers have implemented work centers. Pivot grids and analytics, they seem like sort of the icing on the cake, but really what we see at customers is that they have thousands of queries. And when we analyze their queries, we find out dozens of those queries are the same query over and over again being run by a different department or a different group. In order to minimize the number of queries that you're supporting, you could define a pivot grid and perhaps eliminate 100 queries by defining the dimensions of that pivot grid to satisfy a broader audience, like letting the department be a variable or being able to look at that pivot grid based on different axes. Same way with analytics, you can build an analytic as a tile on a home page, or you can build an analytic into a page that's used for transaction processing. The concept here is to define analytics that help people do their jobs at that particular point in time. The advantage of pivot grids and analytics is that they are real time. You don't have to wait to the end of the month in order to get a report or an Excel query or do some analysis. The analysis has been done for you, and the results are portrayed either as an analytic or a pivot grid. So we see lots of customers putting those in as well. Expenses is an example of a module that customers sometimes own but haven't deployed, or they use some third-party software for expense management. We've seen a lot of advantages of using expenses in PeopleSoft with PeopleSoft Financials and HR because it comes delivered with delivered integration. So rather than having to build the integration or have the customer be responsible for the integration with HR, your employee data, and accounts payable data, if you use PeopleSoft expenses, which is pretty robust, it now, it's easy to integrate, easy to deploy. With image 19 forward, expenses built a bunch of new capabilities into the fluid environment, hotel wizard, receipt itemization, travel authorizations, and the ability to take a picture of a receipt and add it as an attachment. Those are powerful features, and they make expenses very practical. One more example, mobile approvals. Whenever we talk to a customer who's thinking about deploying something on a mobile platform, we say, let's start with approvals. The new approval engine looks the same whether you're on a browser or whether you're on your phone or a tablet, but it's robust, it's proven, and it expands the hours of business that you operate. No longer do you have to show up at work in the morning at 9 o'clock, log on to your PC because you're behind the firewall and approve things. You can now approve, for example, a purchase order for $15,000 when you're in a bar at 2 in the morning and maybe not making the best decisions. And that's the advantage of mobile. Here's a list of features that typically save effort and indirectly save money. And there's just a few examples here I'll highlight. Typically, these are things where customers previously built a customization or a bolt-on, and now they don't need it anymore because it comes delivered. So account reconciliation management, people used to use queries and reports to do account reconciliation. There's a tool built into GL now to automate that process for you and make it simple. If you're requesting a new department or a project and you need to update your chart fields, lots of our customers built something for that. Now you don't need to build anything. Comes delivered, chart field request process that goes through the approval using security and workflow built right in. Attachments, the capability of attachments within the core product can potentially eliminate third-party software. Lots of our customers bought some other vendor's product for scanning and attaching invoices and backup information into PeopleSoft Accounts Payable and General Ledger. There's a good chance with 9.2 you may not need that third-party software anymore. On the right, there's some examples for Accounts Payable. You'll see that the majority of them are designed to push supplier onboarding and the view of your suppliers out to make it less of a manual process. So have suppliers update their own remit to address, or have suppliers updating their own catalog and forms. And then there are some functions that are greatly enhanced because of regulatory changes. It's like a plane is landing behind me. And those things also might justify why you need to upgrade to 9.2. So I've just listed a few here. There have been some changes in lease accounting, some FASB approved changes, and new accounting guidelines that your current release of PeopleSoft may not support. At least it may not support it without customization. Also, PeopleSoft contracts has been greatly enhanced to comply with new revenue accounting rules. And if you're running PeopleSoft on an old infrastructure and an old release, there may be security concerns about how how up to date that infrastructure is. So these are just 3 examples of why you might have to upgrade. Of course, all of this material that I'm sharing with you is just the tip of the iceberg. A great place to get the highlights of what's in each PUM image release and what's in 9.2 is the PeopleSoft Oracle YouTube channel. If you haven't been there, you need to take a look. There are short videos on just about every new feature you could possibly want, including updates on what's changed in each PeopleTools release. I would encourage you to go there if you haven't. So just to sort of wind things up on what you need to know and how to justify this upgrade to 9.2, certainly there are savings on the cost of ownership for PeopleSoft once you get to selective adoption and PUM. Where do the savings come from? Well, you will have no more large upgrade projects. So that could reduce your headcount and your need for outside consulting. You can expect employee productivity to increase. We hear stories of accounts payable, voucher processing improving by 25 or 30%. Overall, the sum of all those features, you should expect a 5 to 10% improvement as kind of a conservative number. PUM and the selective adoption process, the tools that you use, including the PUM dashboard, the customization repository, and even Oracle Cloud Manager, the technology that's now delivered will shorten the time it takes to review updates, fixes, and things that you need to apply. Where that used to be a manual effort and a time-consuming effort, these tools make it easy and fast. On the functional side, you've probably seen some of these before, and they do vary from customer to customer. So we have had customers that have reduced customizations by 50 to 85%, but that's because they were highly customized to begin with. We've seen customers that have what we call end user computing, things they do on a spreadsheet or in a Microsoft Access database, and they're doing these things outside of the PeopleSoft system. Once we showed them the new features in 9.2, they said, okay, we can eliminate that. We can now do that inside PeopleSoft. Workflow, reporting, going to the analytics and pivot grids is going to reduce the number of queries, Envision reports, and SQRs that you have to run every month. So these are just a few of the functional areas where you can expect savings to help justify a move to 9.2. So how does BTRG help in all of this? Well, we've done, I think we're up to around 30 9.2 upgrades, both HCM and financials. We can provide you some realistic estimates around what that would cost, whether you're upgrading and deploying new features or just doing a no-frills upgrade, which is more of a technical upgrade to 9.2. Perhaps you want to look at a pilot for Fluid with just a pilot group of people within your organization to see how that will improve your business. And then if you're moving to automated testing, we have capabilities to help you use the PeopleSoft test framework. Two other things that we have. One is a TCO calculator that compares PeopleSoft to Oracle Cloud. So if you have PeopleSoft HCM, we do a comparison between PeopleSoft HCM and Oracle HCM Cloud. If it's finance, we do PeopleSoft Finance versus Oracle Cloud. We do deploy Oracle Cloud. We have implementation projects underway, so we have some good metrics to share with you there. And then last, but certainly not least, if you're interested in upgrading 9.2 and running PeopleSoft on the Oracle Cloud to get out of the infrastructure game, we provide those services to do the lift and shift, and we also provide managed services to run your PeopleSoft environment. All right, there's my contact information. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Jeff, we had a couple questions here. So in a coexistence scenario where we keep core functions in PeopleSoft but utilize cloud products for certain processes, how difficult is the integration between the two applications? Does Oracle deliver something?
So Oracle does deliver something for that. They have something called ICS, Integration Cloud Services. It's a mapping tool that you have to subscribe to, and it's vendor supported. So any integrations that you develop with ICS will persist long beyond your on-premise software. If you're looking to make the wisest investment, you can do it that way. The cheapest way to do it is very similar to what you have today. With the cloud products, they have file transfer and import capabilities, not unlike what you're used to using, say, SQRs or FTPing a file from one client to another. I think the key there is understanding your long-term strategy. So when we talk to a customer, we don't want to build integrations that are temporary or will go away in a short period of time. So you may need some help with your strategy around integrations. But yes, there's options available, and some of them are vendor supported, like Integration Cloud Services.
Okay. Another one here. Since 9.2 delivers a lot of user-facing analytics via work centers and pivot grids, do organizations usually see a reduction in reporting after the upgrade?
Yes. I mean, that's an easy one to answer. The answer is yes. I think the challenge with reporting, and probably everybody in this webinar knows, is that when you plan to take a report away, somebody in your organization will kick and scream about it and say, you know, I can't live without that report. I need that report. So you really do need executive sponsorship. You need a few champions within your organization that lead the way and say, you know what, I don't need those reports and queries anymore because I can get this information online. So, the effectiveness of that move from reporting centric to more information driven really depends on the culture of the organization. But if you're asking me across the upgrades we've done, have we seen reduction in reporting? I think the answer is yes.
Okay. So here's kind of what looks to be a two-part question. One is, what is Oracle's policy on sustaining support for 9.1? Do we rely on Oracle or any implementation partner like BTRG?
Yeah, so I don't have the details readily available. Russ, that might be a question we want to get back to them on when 9.1. I thought 9.1 support is already actually running out. So it really depends on what software you have. If you have payroll and you need tax updates to keep payroll running, your only two sources are really Oracle and a few other vendors, and we're not one of them. So what we do is we essentially help customers negotiate a deal with Oracle. We go to bat for you and say, look, this customer needs to run 9.1 for another year before they consider a move to something else. What kind of deal can they get on support? So, you know, we're more advocates of Oracle's support strategy, particularly around things as mission critical as payroll. Some of the financials modules, I think you have to take a hard look at whether you really do need Oracle support or not, and that factors into your long-term strategy. If you're planning to move to the cloud within the next year or two, and you don't really want to upgrade to 9.2, there are ways that we can support you in the interim.
Okay. Regarding the move from PeopleSoft on-premise to the Oracle Cloud, what is the typical effort like? What is the typical timeline?
Yeah, it varies depending on how many environments you need to move. You know, we have spoken to a couple customers that made that move in 8 weeks, and I would say 8 weeks is fast if you're going to move everything into the cloud. You know, I think, you know, 12 to 16 weeks is probably a more realistic time frame depending on the size of the client and how many environments you have. So one of the first steps we do is we take an inventory of how many environments you have and how large they are, essentially. And then depending on what people tools release you're on and what database platform you're on, we can give you a more concrete number of how to make that move. So just on that last point, we have customers that are medium size and they run PeopleSoft on SQL Server. Some of them are considering a move to the Oracle Cloud and running PeopleSoft on Oracle. And for that, they're subscribing to Database as a Service as a cost-effective way to get their database licenses. Others on SQL Server are going to keep running PeopleSoft on SQL Server, but still on the Oracle Cloud. And so we're making that move for them. So you can see there's a lot of variations on where you're coming from, what database you have, what services you subscribe to on the cloud side.
Okay. There are a couple other questions, but seem to be more specific to a specific organization. So if we haven't answered your question here, we'll reach out to you directly after this, and we can chat a little bit further about your specific details. Other than that, I'll kind of wrap things up here. Jeff, do you have any closing thoughts or comments?
No, I'm good.
Well, thanks again for everybody for joining today. This webinar will be sent out and posted on our website in the coming days, so feel free to forward that along to your colleagues. Of course, if you have any more questions or want to talk about how BTRG can help you moving forward in PeopleSoft or Oracle Cloud, certainly reach out to Jeff, myself, or anyone else at BTRG. Thanks again for coming, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.